Welcome to Reality Dread, the home of true horror stories.
I never considered myself a timid person. I suppose it's because I grew up in a large family where the house was always noisy and crowded. But 6 months ago, I moved into my first home of my own. It's a small bungalow on the outskirts of town, right next to a dense forest. The neighbors here are quiet, the lots are large, and at first it seemed like paradise to me. Silence, peace, and complete solitude. But on that October night, I realized that solitude isn't always a blessing. The evening started off as ordinary as could be. It was pouring outside. One of those long, drawn-out autumn downpours that turn everything around into a gray mess. The wind howled through the tree branches right behind my fence, and I decided it was the perfect time to make some coffee and watch a TV show. My living room has huge floor-to-ceiling French windows. They look right out onto the backyard and the edge of the forest. It looks beautiful during the day, but at night, these windows turn into black mirrors. You can't see what's happening outside, but anyone standing in the darkness of the woods can see you clearly, bathed in the bright light of the living room lamps. That night, I made my first mistake. I forgot to draw the curtains. I was sitting on the couch with my laptop. The lights in the room were dimmed. Only one desk lamp was on. The rain was pounding on the roof so loudly that I could barely hear the sounds inside the house. Around 11 o'clock that night, I felt a strange sense of unease. You know that feeling when it seems like there's someone else in the room? That terrifying, eerie sensation, as if someone were watching you. I looked up from the screen and gazed at the black window pane. At first, I saw nothing but my own reflection. But then, a flash of lightning lit up the sky. For a split second, the backyard was bathed in a ghostly white light. And in that instant, I saw him. Right at the edge of the woods, about 10 meters from the window, a man was standing. He was completely motionless. He was wearing a long, dark raincoat, the hood of which hid his face. He was just standing there, in the pouring rain, staring straight at my window, right at me. My heart skipped a beat. I froze, hoping it was just my imagination, or a strange shadow cast by a tree. I waited for the next flash of lightning. When the sky lit up again, the figure was still there, but now it was closer, at least 3 meters closer. I slowly got up from the couch, trying not to make any sudden movements. My first impulse was to run to the window and draw the curtains, but I was afraid of coming face to face with that person through the thin glass. I walked over to the light switch and turned off the living room light. Now I could see the street better. I pressed my face against the glass, peering into the darkness. The yard seemed empty. The rain continued to pour, and the wind rocked the swing left behind by the previous owners. The creaking of the chains could be heard even through the closed windows. But then I noticed something strange. In the mud right in front of the window, where the light from the living room had fallen before, there were clear boot prints. They were enormous. And they didn't lead toward the forest, but toward the side of the house, where the entrance to my basement was located. I felt cold sweat running down my back. I rushed to the front door and checked the lock. It was locked. The back door was locked too. I went back to the living room and froze. A knock. It wasn't the knock on the door. It was a muffled, rhythmic sound coming from under the floor. It was as if someone were gently tapping the concrete basement floor with their knuckles. I grabbed the phone and dialed 911. "Someone's trying to break into my house," I said, trying to keep my voice steady. "I saw a person in the backyard, and now I'm hearing noises coming from the basement." The dispatcher said a patrol car would be there in 10 minutes. 10 minutes, I thought. In a situation like this, it feels like an eternity. I grabbed the biggest knife I could find in the kitchen and huddled in a corner of the hallway from where I could see both doors. The noises from downstairs stopped. It became so quiet that I could hear the ticking of the wall clock. It was the sound of a small basement window opening. I had completely forgotten about it. It was too small for an adult, but if someone were very thin. I heard a rustling sound coming from the ventilation grill that led directly from the basement into the hallway. Someone was down there. I saw a faint beam of light from a flashlight shining through the bars. "I called the police," I shouted into the void. "Get out of here!" Silence fell. And then a voice came from the vent, a hoarse whisper that uttered just one sentence.
"You forgot to close the latch on the second window."
I was paralyzed. There was another room in my house, a small guest bedroom that I hardly ever went into. I rushed over there, hoping I'd make it in time. When I opened the door, my knees buckled. The window was wide open. Water was streaming down the curtains, and a huge puddle had formed on the carpet. There was only one thing lying on the windowsill: a wet glove. Old, dirty, and soaked through. Just then, sirens wailed outside. Blue and red lights cut through the darkness of the yard. The police searched the entire house. They went down to the basement, checked every corner, searched the attic, and combed through the edge of the woods. They didn't find anyone. One of the officers motioned for me to come to the living room window. "Look at this," he said, shining a flashlight on the glass. On the outside of the window, about 1.5 meters up, were handprints. Dozens of them. They were arranged as if someone had been kneeling there for a long time while I was sitting on the couch, slowly sliding their hands across the glass, up, down, and to the sides, as if they were trying to feel the entire room through the glass. But the creepiest part came to light later. When the police searched the basement, they found an old mattress there that I was planning to throw away. On top of the mattress was a mountain of empty takeout containers from a local fast food joint, the very same food I'd ordered for myself last week. Someone had been living in my basement for at least 7 days. He'd been keeping warm there, eating my food, and thoroughly studying my routine. A police officer later explained to me the mindset of people like that. They're often driven by a twisted sense of power and control. That night, he hadn't planned on scaring me. Seeing that I'd forgotten to close the curtains, he simply stepped out into the rain to watch. He stood there in the dark, reveling in the fact that he could see me clearly, while I couldn't see him. And if it hadn't been for that random flash of lightning, he would have silently returned to the basement, and I would never have known a thing. I moved out of that house the next morning. I didn't bother taking my furniture. I just grabbed my documents and headed to a friend's place on the other side of the state. Now I live in a new apartment on the 4th floor. I have a good door. But every night before bed, I obsessively check every lock and pull the curtains shut tightly. Because now I know. The greatest fear isn't when someone tries to break into your home. It's the realization that someone has been living inside for a long time, and you didn't even suspect it.